A simple piece of bread. That's what my granddaughter asked me for, while my daughter mocked me as if I were a stranger in my own home. The next day, I transferred my entire inheritance of $450,000 to that 8-year-old girl's name. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would. And if you, for a second, feel like this seems familiar, I just ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me continue to get this weight off my chest that I've carried for so long. My name is Grace Miller. I'm 68 years old, and I live in a quiet neighborhood in San Antonio, near the Market Square, where I spent my youth selling sweetbreads I baked myself in the early morning hours. My hands, now wrinkled and spotted by time, still remember the texture of the dough, the heat of the old brick oven, the smell of cinnamon that clung to my worn apron. That October Saturday, I woke up while it was still dark. My knees protested with every step toward the kitchen, but my heart was beating with an excitement I hadn't felt in months. Sarah, my oldest daughter, had promised to come for lunch. She would bring her husband Mark, his mother who had arrived from London the week before, and most importantly, my granddaughter Emily, that little creature with enormous eyes and a shy smile who was the only reason I kept getting up every morning. I cooked as if it were a celebration. I made my signature pot roast that slow-cooked for hours, creamy mashed potatoes with that hint of garlic they loved so much when they were girls, and handmade dinner rolls that I kneaded one by one, feeling the dough surrender beneath my fingers. And the bread. Oh, the bread. I made cinnamon rolls dusted with powdered sugar, golden buttered apple turnovers, and those tiny sugar cookies shaped like little bones that Emily adored, even though it was still weeks before Halloween. I cleaned the house until the floor tiles shone like mirrors. I put fresh flowers I bought at the corner farmer's market, marigolds and white roses, in the vase my mother gave me when I got married. I spritzed the sofa cushions with lavender water. I arranged the photographs on the mantel, Sarah and Laura as little girls in their first communion dresses, my late husband Arthur with his wide smile in front of the carpentry workshop that never quite took off, Emily on every birthday since she was born. When they arrived at 2 p.m, they came in like a cold gust of wind. Mark strode in first with his expensive suit and shiny shoes that echoed against my humble floor. He didn't even look at me. Behind him came his mother, a tall, elegant woman named Eleanor, wearing sunglasses she didn't remove even upon entering, and Sarah, my Sarah, with her hair pulled back in a perfect bun and that French perfume that suffocated the smell of home-cooked food. "Smells funny in here," Mark muttered, just loud enough for me to hear. "Kind of old." Eleanor let out an awkward little laugh. Sarah said nothing. She didn't defend me. She simply sat on the sofa and pulled out her cell phone, that device that seemed more important than any conversation with me. Only Emily ran to me, her small arms wrapped around my waist, and she buried her face in my apron. "Grandma," she whispered in that voice that melted my soul. "It smells so good. Did you make your bread?" I stroked her brown hair, so much like mine when I was young. "Yes, my love. For you. Can I have one of the little ones? The ones with sugar that look like bones?" Before I could answer, Sarah's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Bread? Mom, please." Her tone was pure annoyance, as if I had asked her to eat poison. "Stop giving my daughter junk. Can't you see she's gaining weight? Look at her. Her legs are already getting chubby. Or do you want her to end up like you?" The world stood still. My daughter's words stabbed me somewhere deep in my chest, where there were still remnants of dignity left to break. I looked at my body. It was true I had gained weight over the years, that my arms hung flabby, that my belly had surrendered to gravity and the pregnancies that left me varicose veins and stretch marks like maps of pain. Mark laughed, a short, cruel laugh that echoed in my small living room. "Besides, this whole baking thing at your age is ridiculous, Grace. You should be resting, not getting in the way in the kitchen like you're the hired help." Eleanor said nothing, but her silence was worse than any insult. She simply looked away, as if I were part of the worn-out furniture. Emily squeezed my hand. Her eyes filled with tears she struggled to hold back. She was so little, but she already knew cruelty when she saw it. I lowered my gaze. I didn't have the strength to respond. I had no words to defend myself from the people I had brought into the world, fed, clothed, educated with the sweat of my brow and sleepless nights. Instead, I walked silently to the kitchen, my slippers shuffling against the floor I had just cleaned. I took one of the small cookies. It was still warm. I broke it in half with my trembling hands and returned to the living room. Sarah was on the phone, ignoring me completely. I approached Emily and gave her the cookie secretly, folding it into a paper napkin. She received it as if it were a treasure. Her small fingers clutched it carefully, and she looked at me with those eyes that hadn't yet learned to lie. "Thank you, Grandma," she whispered. During lunch, I served the plates like an automaton. No one said thank you. No one praised the food. Mark ate quickly, checking his brand-name watch every few minutes. Eleanor barely touched the roast, saying it was a bit too rich for her European palate. Sarah took 2 bites of potatoes and pushed her plate aside. I ate standing up, leaning against the kitchen wall, feeling how every bite got stuck in my throat. It was then that I heard the conversation. They thought I couldn't hear from where I was. But my ears, though old, still caught words whispered with venom. "I need Mom to sign the deed to the house this week," Sarah said in a low voice. "Eleanor wants to stay longer and we can't keep living in that ridiculous apartment. This house has 3 bedrooms. It's perfect." "What if she refuses?" Mark asked. "She won't refuse. She's old, lonely, scared. We just have to pressure her a little more. Make her feel like she owes us something after everything we've done for her." Eleanor chimed in with a soft but calculating voice. "In England, when parents can no longer manage on their own, the children have a legal right to administer their assets. It must be similar here, right?" "More or less," Sarah replied. "But it's easier if she signs voluntarily. We don't want legal trouble." My hands gripped the edge of the sink. The plate I was washing almost slipped from my grasp. So that's what I was to them. Not a mother, not a grandmother. Just a signature, an obstacle between them and what they wanted. Emily came into the kitchen just then. She tugged on my skirt and showed me the half-eaten cookie. "It's delicious, Grandma. The best in the world." I hugged her so tightly I felt my old bones creak. She was the only pure thing I had left in this world. The only one who still saw me as a human being. When they left, without saying goodbye, without helping to clear the table, leaving their dirty plates as if I were their employee, I sat on the sofa and cried. I cried for the woman I once was and the one I had become. I cried for the lost years spent trying to earn a love that was never real. And it was in that silence, broken only by my sobs, that I made the decision that would change everything. The next day, I called Mr. Davis. On Monday, I woke up with my eyes swollen from crying. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, the one with the rusted frame Arthur had promised to replace before he died, and I saw a woman I no longer recognized. The wrinkles around my eyes seemed deeper, like furrows carved by years of fake smiles and swallowed tears. My hair, completely gray now, fell lifelessly on my shoulders. When had I stopped caring about my appearance? When had I accepted becoming invisible? I put on my best blouse, a peach-colored one I bought at a local boutique 3 years ago and only wore for special occasions. I put on the silver earrings my mother left me, the only ones I hadn't sold when Sarah needed money for her wedding. I needed to feel worthy, even if just for a few hours. Mr. Davis's office was downtown, near the San Fernando Cathedral. I took the city bus from my neighborhood, squeezed between workers on their way to their jobs and students with their heavy backpacks. The ride took almost an hour. My knees protested every time the bus braked sharply, but I gritted my teeth and looked out the window, watching the city that had been my home for almost 70 years. We passed the majestic theater, with its grand, ornate facade that had always seemed like something out of a dream. I remembered when I took Sarah and Laura to see a musical there when they were 7 and 9. I used my entire Christmas bonus that year to buy the tickets. They ate popcorn and laughed, and I felt like the proudest mother in the world. Now, one of them hadn't spoken to me in 3 years, and the other only called when she needed something. Mr. Davis received me in his small but tidy office. He was a man in his 60s, with a graying mustache and thick glasses that gave him a serious but trustworthy look. He had drafted Arthur's will years ago and had also helped me when I had to sell the tools from the workshop. "Mrs. Miller?" he said, offering me a worn leather chair. It's good to see you. Although from your call, I gather this isn't a pleasant visit. I sat down slowly, placing my purse on my lap. It was an old embroidered cloth bag that I had decorated myself with colorful flowers, back when I still had time for such things. Inside, I carried all my important documents: the deed to my house, the papers for the plot of land I inherited from my grandfather in the hill country, the bank statements for my savings. "Mr. Davis," I began, and my voice sounded firmer than I expected. "I want to change my will. Everything. Completely." He took off his glasses and looked at me with those tired eyes that had seen too many families destroyed by money. "Are you sure? The current will leaves everything divided equally between your two daughters, Sarah and Laura. It's the most common arrangement, what most families consider fair." "I know," I replied, "but I don't want to be fair. I want to be honest." I told him everything. I told him about the lunch on Saturday, about the cruel words, about the conversation I overheard. I told him about Laura, who stopped visiting after I refused to give her money for a business that turned out to be a scam. I told him about the years of sacrifice, about the times I skipped meals so they could have new school uniforms, about the nights I worked until my fingers ached to pay for the college degrees they never finished. Mr. Davis listened in silence, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he sighed deeply. "Mrs. Miller, I understand your pain. Believe me, I've seen similar cases more times than I'd like. But I must warn you, changing a will this drastically can lead to serious legal conflicts. Your daughters could contest it, claim you weren't of sound mind." "I'm more sane than I've ever been," I said firmly. "For the first time in years, I see things clearly. And who do you want to name as your beneficiary?" "My granddaughter, Emily. She's 8 years old. I want everything, absolutely everything I own, to go to her when I die. The house, the land, the savings, everything." The lawyer leaned back in his chair, which creaked under his weight. "That's about $450,000, according to the appraisals I have in your file. It's a considerable sum. Are you aware that Emily is a minor? A trust will be needed. A legal guardian to manage the assets until she comes of age." "I know, and I don't want it to be either of my daughters. I want it to be you, Mr. Davis, or someone from the court, an impartial party who will protect my granddaughter's interests and not let anyone touch that money until she can decide what to do with it." We spent the next 2 hours reviewing documents, signing papers, establishing clauses. The lawyer was meticulous, making sure every word was ironclad against potential challenges. We included a psychological evaluation of me, conducted by a certified doctor, proving I was in full command of my mental faculties. We recorded a video where I explained my reasons, looking directly at the camera, with my voice clear and my hands steady on the desk. "I, Grace Miller, being of sound mind and body, declare that I leave all my assets to my granddaughter, Emily Clark, because she is the only one who has treated me with love and respect, because she is the only one who still calls me Grandma without asking for anything in return, and because I want her to have a future where no one can hurt her the way I've been hurt." When I left the office, the sun was already setting. The downtown streets were filling with people leaving work, with food trucks selling hot dogs and tacos, with musicians tuning their instruments near the plaza. I walked aimlessly, feeling a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness, not yet. It was something more like relief. Like when you let go of something heavy you've been carrying for so long you've forgotten what it feels like to walk without that weight. I stopped in front of a small historic church, Mission San Jose. I went inside, though I'm not very religious. I sat in a pew at the back, where the candlelight created dancing shadows on the walls. An elderly woman was praying the rosary in a low voice. A young man was crying silently in front of a statue of the Virgin Mary. I closed my eyes and I didn't exactly pray, but I spoke. I spoke to Arthur, to my mother, to all the past versions of myself who had endured so much to get to this moment. "No more," I whispered. "I'm not going to let them use me anymore. I'm not going to beg for love." When I got home that night, the house was dark and quiet. I heated up some leftover soup and sat down to eat alone in the kitchen. But for the first time in a long time, the loneliness didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like peace. I didn't know how long it would take for my daughters to find out. I didn't know how they would react. But I had made the decision, and a part of me, the part that had been dormant for decades, had finally woken up. That night I slept deeply. No pills, no nightmares. Just the silence and the certainty that, for once in my life, I had chosen to protect myself, and the one little person who still deserved my unconditional love. The following days passed with a strange calm, like the silence before a storm breaks. I followed my routine, waking up early, sweeping the porch, watering the bougainvillea bushes growing by the fence, making my coffee on the gas stove that hissed every time I lit the burner. But something had changed inside me. I walked a little straighter. I breathed a little deeper. On Wednesday afternoon, Sarah showed up unannounced. I heard the honk of her BMW SUV from inside, that impatient sound that no longer made me run outside like it used to. I peeked through the window and saw her there, in her dark sunglasses, checking her phone. She didn't even bother to get out of the car. I walked out slowly, wiping my hands on my apron. She rolled down the window just enough for her voice to come through. "Mom, I need you to sign some papers," she said without preamble, without even a hello or how are you. "It's to update some things with the house. The notary says it's urgent." "What papers?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Oh, Mom, don't complicate things. They're just legal formalities. You just sign where I've marked with yellow sticky notes." She held out a black leather folder through the window, without looking me in the eye. I took the folder, feeling its weight in my hands. I opened it right there, standing on the sidewalk, as a garbage truck rumbled noisily down the street. They were property transfer documents. My house, the house where I had lived for 32 years, the house I bought with the money I earned selling bread at the market, was being transferred to the name of Sarah Clark. "These aren't formalities," I said, my voice surprisingly firm. "This is you trying to take my house." Sarah sighed with exasperation, as if I were a foolish child who didn't understand the obvious. "Mom, don't be dramatic. It's to protect the family assets. If something happens to you, if you get sick, if you become senile, the house could be lost in legal red tape. This way I can take care of everything. I'm not sick. I'm not senile." "Not yet," she replied with that condescending tone that made me feel small. "But at your age, things can change from one day to the next. Besides, Eleanor is staying for 6 months. Mark and I can't fit in the apartment with her and Emily. This house has plenty of space. This is my house. And you'll keep living here, Mom. Nobody's kicking you out. We're just being proactive." She finally looked at me, and in her eyes I saw something that made my blood run cold. Impatience. Annoyance. As if I were a pending task on her to-do list. "I'm not signing," I said, closing the folder and handing it back to her. Sarah's face transformed. The mask of forced patience cracked and something ugly appeared. Something that had always been there, but that I had refused to see. "What did you say?" "I said I'm not signing anything. This house is mine and it will remain mine until the day I die." "You're making a mistake, Mom. Mark has connections, lawyers. We can have you declared incapable of managing your own assets. There are ways to do this with or without your consent." Her words hit me like slaps, but this time I didn't look down. "Try it. My lawyer will be happy to see you in court." For the first time in years, I saw genuine surprise on my daughter's face. "Your lawyer? Since when do you have a lawyer?" "Since I stopped being naive." Sarah sped off violently, the tires screeching against the pavement. She didn't even look back as she drove away. I stood there, on the sidewalk, holding my apron with trembling hands but with my head held high. I couldn't eat dinner that night. My stomach had tightened into a hard knot. I sat in the living room, surrounded by photographs that now seemed like mockeries of the past. Sarah at her high school graduation, in her cap and gown, smiling broadly while I stood behind her, still in my work uniform because I had rushed from the market to get to the ceremony. Laura at her wedding, in a dress that cost more than I made in 6 months, while I wore the same dress I had worn at my own wedding 30 years earlier. I remembered when Sarah was 5 and got pneumonia. I spent 3 sleepless nights by her hospital bed, praying, crying, promising all the saints that if she recovered, I would do anything. And she recovered. And I kept my promise. I worked double shifts for years so she would never lack for anything. I remembered when Laura failed her college entrance exam and cried for hours in my lap. I dried her tears, made her favorite hot chocolate, and paid for a private prep course that cost all my savings for that year. She passed the exam on her second try, but never finished her degree. She dropped out in her second year because it wasn't for her. And now, decades after giving everything, after emptying myself completely for them, they treated me like a burden, like a problem to be solved. On Thursday morning, while I was watering the plants, I heard agitated voices on the other side of the fence. I peeked out carefully and saw Laura getting out of a taxi. I hadn't seen her in 3 years, not since that terrible argument when she asked me for $20,000 for a sure-thing business that turned out to be a pyramid scheme. She looked different. Thinner, with her hair dyed blonde, and clothes that tried to look expensive, but were clearly cheap knockoffs. She was carrying a small suitcase. "Mom," she said, and her voice sounded broken, vulnerable. "Mom, I'm so sorry." I didn't open the gate right away. I stood there, the hose dripping water onto my bare feet, looking at her with the distance of someone who has learned to guard her heart. "What do you want, Laura?" "To talk to you. To ask for your forgiveness. I've been a terrible daughter, Mom. I know. I was horrible to you. But I've been thinking. I've been in therapy, and I realized all the pain I caused you." Tears streamed down her cheeks. They looked genuine. My mother's heart, that muscle trained for decades to respond to my daughter's pain, contracted. I opened the gate. For the next 2 weeks, Laura settled into the guest room. She would get up early and make me coffee. She accompanied me to the market and carried the grocery bags. She helped me clean the house and told me stories about her life, her failures, how she had hit rock bottom and finally understood the value of family. We cooked together in the afternoons. She peeled the potatoes while I prepared the stew. She helped me hang the laundry in the backyard, and we would sit and drink sun tea in the shade of the lemon tree Arthur had planted when we got married. At night, we watched soap operas together, commenting on the ridiculous characters and their exaggerated dramas. She would laugh at the way I shouted advice at the television, as if the actors could hear me. I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, all was not lost. That maybe Laura had really changed. That maybe we could still salvage something of what we once were. Until that Friday afternoon. I came home early from the market because the man who sold me tomatoes had given me an extra box. I came in through the back door, the one that led straight to the kitchen, planning to surprise Laura with a special meal. I found her in my bedroom. She was kneeling in front of my dresser, the one with the drawer where I kept my important documents. She had papers scattered on the bed, deeds, bank statements, and a copy of my old will, the one that left everything divided between her and Sarah. "What are you doing?" My voice came out as a harsh whisper. Laura jumped, so startled that she knocked a pile of papers to the floor. Her face went from fright to guilt, and then, inexplicably, to outrage. "What is this, Mom?" she asked, holding up a document. "You changed the will? You left everything to Emily?" My heart stopped. She had found the copy Mr. Davis had given me. I had hidden it between the pages of my Bible, but apparently it hadn't been a good enough hiding place. "How dare you go through my things? How dare I? How dare you disinherit us?" Her voice rose. "Do you know how long Sarah and I have been planning what to do with this house? With the land in the hill country? And now it turns out it's all for an 8-year-old girl. A girl who treats me better than both of you combined. She's not your daughter. We are. We have a right to that inheritance." "You have no right to anything," I said, and each word came out firm, clear, filled with a strength I didn't know I possessed. I worked for that money. I paid for this house. I bought that land with the money my grandfather left me, and I decide what to do with all of it. Laura dropped the papers and came toward me. Her eyes, so much like mine, were red with fury. "This isn't over, Mom. We're going to contest that will. We're going to prove you're senile, that Emily manipulated you, that lawyer took advantage of you. Get out of my house." "What?" I said, "Get out, now. Take your suitcase and leave." For a moment, I thought she was going to hit me. Her hand rose, trembling, and I saw something wild and desperate in her eyes. But she finally turned, grabbed her suitcase from the guest room, and left, slamming the door so hard it made the windows rattle. I collapsed onto the bed, surrounded by scattered papers and broken promises, and I cried. I cried for the daughter I thought I had, and the cruel stranger she really was. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in the living room with all the lights off, listening to the sounds of the street. Dogs barking in the distance, the garbage truck passing at 3 a.m, the early morning delivery trucks. Every noise made me jump. I was afraid Laura would come back. Afraid Sarah would show up with Mark and their lawyers. I was afraid of my own family. When Saturday dawned, my eyes burned with exhaustion, but my mind was strangely clear. I made a strong coffee and sat on the porch, watching the sunlight illuminate the bougainvillea leaves. I needed to think. I needed to prepare for what was coming. I didn't have to wait long. At 10 a.m, the doorbell rang insistently. 3 long, aggressive rings. I looked through the peephole and saw something that chilled me to the bone. Sarah, Laura, Mark, and 2 people I didn't know. A man in a gray suit with a briefcase, and a woman with glasses holding a tablet. I opened the door but left the security chain on. "Mom, open the door," Sarah ordered in an authoritarian voice. "We need to talk. Now. We can talk like this. Don't be ridiculous. We're here with Mr. Montoya, the attorney, and a social worker from Adult Protective Services. This is serious." My heart began to pound. APS? The agency that protected vulnerable adults? What had my daughters done? Why did you bring these people here? The man in the suit stepped forward. His voice was professional but cold. "Mrs. Miller, I'm attorney Jorge Montoya. Your daughters have filed a formal petition alleging that you may be suffering from cognitive decline and require supervision for the management of your assets and major decisions. We're here to conduct an evaluation." "I have no decline. My mind is perfectly fine." "That's what we're here to determine," the woman with the tablet interjected. "I'm Patricia Duran, a social worker. We just need to ask you a few questions and check your living conditions. It's a standard procedure." "You're not coming into my house without a court order." Sarah exploded. "Mom, stop acting like a stubborn old woman. We're trying to help you. You changed your will without consulting us. You gave everything to an 8-year-old. You're making irrational decisions." "They are my decisions, my money, my house. Not when you're senile and under the influence of strangers," Laura snapped. "That lawyer of yours probably convinced you to change the will to get a cut for himself. It's typical of those vultures." Mark stepped forward, placing his hand against the door. "Grace, let's be reasonable. Your daughters just want to protect you. If you have nothing to hide, why not let us in?" I slammed the door shut and ran to my bedroom. My hands were shaking as I searched for my cell phone, that old device I barely knew how to use. I dialed Mr. Davis's number with clumsy fingers. "Mr. Davis, they're at my house. My daughters brought lawyers and people from APS. They're saying I'm senile. They want to take my house." His voice turned serious instantly. "Don't open the door, Mrs. Miller. Don't sign anything. Don't say anything without me present. I'm on my way immediately." The doorbell kept ringing, then came pounding on the door. Sarah's voice shouting for me to stop playing the victim, that this was for my own good. Mark's voice threatening to call the police for obstruction. I even heard Laura crying, saying they just wanted to take care of me, that it broke their hearts to see me like this. I sat on my bedroom floor, my back against the door, and waited. The walls seemed to be closing in on me. Could they really declare me incompetent? Could they take away control of my own life? Mr. Davis arrived 30 minutes later. I heard his firm voice on the other side of the door, arguing with my daughters. "I am Mrs. Grace Miller's attorney. Any evaluation of mental competency requires a prior court order. What you are doing constitutes intimidation and harassment. I suggest you leave, or I will be forced to call the authorities." "We're her family," Sarah protested. "We have more right to be here than you do. Rights are determined by law, not genetics. Your mother is an adult, of sound mind, and has the right to decide who enters her private property. If you have concerns about her mental health, you may formally petition a judge for an evaluation, but until then, you are violating her privacy." There was more arguing, raised voices, but finally, I heard footsteps moving away, the engine of Sarah's SUV starting. The silence they left behind felt heavy, poisonous. I opened the door. Mr. Davis was there, with his briefcase and his worried expression. "Are you all right, Mrs. Miller?" I couldn't answer. I collapsed into his arms and cried like I hadn't cried since Arthur died. I cried for the daughters I had lost, for the family I never really had, for all the wasted years trying to earn a love that was never genuine. We sat in the living room, and he explained the legal situation. My daughters could try to file for a conservatorship, arguing mental incapacity. They would need medical proof, testimonies, evidence that I couldn't take care of myself. It was a long and difficult process, but not impossible. That's why we recorded that video, Mrs. Miller. That's why we have the recent psychological evaluation. But I'll be honest with you, this is going to get ugly. They'll hire investigators. They'll look for any mistake you've made, any forgotten appointment, any unpaid bill. They will try to build a case to prove you are not competent. And what can I do? Live your life normally, maintain your routines, continue to be the capable and lucid woman you are, and document everything. If they harass you, record it. If they send you threatening messages, save them. Everything can be used as evidence that they are the ones acting in bad faith, not you. After he left, I stared at the photographs on the walls. All those lying smiles, all those empty celebrations. I took each picture frame and placed it face down on the mantel. I didn't have the strength to put them away yet, but I couldn't bear to look at them either. Sunday dawned overcast, threatening rain. I didn't leave the house. I didn't get dressed. I stayed in my pajamas, drinking chamomile tea and watching through the window as my neighbors lived their normal lives. Mr. Rodriguez was washing his car. Mrs. Guadalupe was sweeping her sidewalk. The kids from the corner were playing soccer in the street. Did any of them know what was happening inside my house? Would they care if they did? On Monday, I received the first text message from Sarah. I hadn't spoken to her since the incident on Saturday. "Mom, this can all be resolved easily. If you change the will back to how it was, we'll forget the whole thing. We can be a family again." I didn't reply. An hour later, another message. "Don't be stubborn. This is only going to get worse. Mark has already hired a lawyer who specializes in conservatorship cases. They have an 87% success rate." Then one from Laura. "Mom, please. We don't want to go to court, but you're forcing us. This is all that lawyer's fault for manipulating you. When we win the case, we're going to sue him too for taking advantage of a vulnerable senior." Vulnerable senior. That's how they saw me. Not as a woman who had worked her whole life, not as their mother who had raised them alone after their father died, not as a human being with dignity and rights, just as an obstacle between them and the money. On Tuesday afternoon, as I was sitting on the porch trying not to think about anything, I heard a small sound at the gate. I looked over and saw something that made me cry again, but this time from a different emotion. It was Emily. She was alone, her school backpack on, clinging to the bars of the gate like a little prisoner. Her big eyes were red from crying. "Grandma," she whispered, "they won't let me see you. Mom says you're sick in the head and that you don't love me anymore." But I don't believe her. I snuck away from school. "Please, can I come in?" I opened the gate so fast I nearly tore it from its hinges. I took my granddaughter in my arms and held her tight against my chest, feeling her little heart beat against mine. "My love, my sweet girl, my beautiful child. Of course I love you. I love you more than anything in this world. Then why can't we come to your house anymore?" She sobbed against my shoulder. "Mom says you're going to go far away, that we won't be able to see you anymore. She says you did bad things to her." I brought her inside and sat her at the kitchen table. I made her hot chocolate and gave her a sugar cookie, the kind she loved so much. While she ate with her little hands, I tried to find the right words. How do you explain to an 8-year-old girl that her family was being torn apart by money? "Emily, sometimes grown-ups fight over silly things. Your mom and I are having a problem, but it has nothing to do with you. You will always be my granddaughter. I will always love you. Nothing can ever change that. But can I still come visit?" "Whenever you want, my love. This door will always be open for you." She finished her chocolate and took something out of her backpack. It was a drawing made with crayons. It showed the two of us, holding hands, with a huge sun overhead and flowers all around. At the bottom, In her crooked little girl handwriting, she had written, "Grandma, you really do love me." It was that drawing, that piece of paper with cheap crayons, that gave me the strength to keep going. Because if my daughters wanted a war, I was going to give them one. But not for the money, not for the house. It was to protect that little girl from becoming what they had become, to protect her innocence from the greed that had destroyed her mother and her aunt, and to prove to myself that I was still worth fighting for. I had to take Emily back to her house that same afternoon. We walked together through the neighborhood streets, her backpack bouncing on her back, my heart in my throat. I knew what was waiting for me. Sarah opened the door before I could even knock. Her face was a mask of contained fury. "Where was she?" she asked. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Emily as if she were a traitor. "The school called me and said she never came back after recess. I almost called the police. She was with me," I said calmly. "She came to visit me." "Emily, go to your room. Now." The little girl hugged me tightly before letting go of my hand. She walked up the stairs slowly, looking back at me with those eyes that begged me not to leave. But I had no choice. This was her home. I was just the visitor who was no longer welcome. Sarah waited until she heard the bedroom door close. Then she stepped so close I could smell her expensive perfume, the one she used to impress her mother-in-law's friends. "If you ever go near my daughter again without my permission, I will report you for kidnapping. Do you understand me?" She came to see me. I didn't seek her out. "I don't care. You're putting ideas in her head. You're manipulating her so she'll feel sorry for you, so she'll defend you. It's pathetic. I don't have to manipulate anyone to love me, Sarah. She loves me because I treat her with respect. Something you never learned how to do." Her hand flew up, and for a second I thought she was going to slap me, but she restrained herself. Instead, her voice came out as a venomous whisper. "I'm going to take everything from you, Mom. The house, the money, even your name if I have to. And when you have nothing left, when you're alone and broke, you'll come begging me to forgive you. And on that day, I'll be the one to shut the door in your face." I walked away without another word, but her words followed me all the way home, sticking in my mind like needles. The days turned into weeks. October gave way to November, and with it came the chill that made my bones ache. I started receiving legal notices. First one, then another, then so many I lost count. My daughters had formally initiated the legal process to have me declared incompetent. Mr. Davis accompanied me to every appointment. There were medical evaluations where doctors who didn't know me asked me strange questions. "What day is it today? Who is the current president? Can you count backward from 100 by sevens?" There were interviews with social workers who inspected my house, took pictures of my refrigerator, my bathroom, my bedroom. A young woman with glasses wrote notes while I explained how I paid my bills, how I cooked, how I cared for myself. "Do you have family support?" she asked. "No." "Close friends?" "Not anymore." "Anyone to verify you take your medications?" "I don't take any medications. I'm healthy." She wrote something in her notebook that I couldn't read. "There was a private investigator. I spotted him one morning when I was going out to buy bread. A man in a gray car parked across the street, holding a camera. When he saw me looking, he drove off. But he was back the next day, and the day after that. Mr. Davis explained it was normal. They're documenting your daily activities, looking for any sign that you can't care for yourself. If you trip, if you forget something at the store, if you talk to yourself, it can all be used against you." I started to be afraid of being myself in my own home. Afraid I'd forget where I put my keys. Afraid I'd get the day of the week wrong. Afraid that any normal human error would be twisted into evidence of my supposed senility. One afternoon in mid-November, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman I didn't recognize. Elegant, in a burgundy pantsuit and carrying a leather briefcase. "Mrs. Grace Miller?" she asked when I opened the door. "My name is Carmen Flores. I represent your daughters in the conservatorship case. I'd like to make you a proposal. I have nothing to discuss with you. Please, just 5 minutes. It's in your best interest to hear me out." Against my better judgment, I let her in. We sat in the living room, she with her back perfectly straight, and me hunched over by the weight of the last few months. "Mrs. Miller, I'll be direct. This legal process will be long, expensive, and painful for everyone. Your daughters are prepared to see it through to the end, but they would prefer to avoid it if possible. What do they want? For you to revoke the current will and revert to the previous version where both your daughters inherit equally. In return, they will drop the conservatorship petition, and you will retain full control of your assets for the duration of your life. And Emily? Emily is well cared for by her parents. She doesn't need that inheritance. You can leave her something symbolic if you wish. But the bulk of the estate should go to your legitimate daughters. My legitimate daughters, I repeated bitterly. The ones who treated me like garbage. The ones who only sought me out when they needed money. The ones who called me a useless old woman and threatened me. Ms. Flores didn't flinch. I understand there are family tensions, ma'am, but consider the alternative. If the judge finds you incompetent, you won't just lose control of your inheritance. You'll lose control of everything. Your house, your bank accounts, your medical decisions. Everything will be handed over to a court-appointed conservator. I'd rather have that than reward them for their cruelty. Even if it means you can never see your granddaughter again, because I guarantee you if they win this case, the first thing your daughters will do is get a restraining order prohibiting you from contacting Emily. They will claim you are a danger to the child. It felt like I had been punched in the gut. They can't do that. They can, and they will. We've already spoken to a child psychologist who is willing to testify that Emily's attachment to you is unhealthy, that you are using the child to emotionally manipulate your family. Tears began to stream down my cheeks. I just love her. She's the only good thing I have left. Then sign the agreement, Mrs. Miller. Get your normal life back. Maintain the relationship with your granddaughter. Everybody wins. Everybody except me. Ms. Flores stood up, leaving a folder on the coffee table. The document is here. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, we proceed with the full hearing, and I'm warning you, it won't be pleasant. When she left, I stared at that folder as if it were a venomous snake. Inside was my surrender, my defeat, the confirmation that love and dignity were worthless against the power of money and expensive lawyers. I called Mr. Davis. I told him about the visit, the offer, the veiled threats. It's a classic intimidation tactic, he said. They want to break you down psychologically. But Mrs. Miller, you need to understand something. They don't have a strong case. The medical evaluations so far show you are perfectly competent. Your finances are in order. Your house is clean. You are functioning independently. An impartial judge is not going to declare you incompetent based on your daughter's desire to inherit sooner. But what if they succeed? What if they take Emily away from me? There was a long silence. That's the most painful part of this, Mrs. Miller. They know Emily is your weak spot. They're going to use her as a weapon. I couldn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned until the mattress felt like it was made of rocks. I finally got up and sat in the kitchen, drinking tea and looking at the pictures Emily had stuck to my refrigerator with magnets. One of us baking together, our hands covered in flour. One of her hugging my leg, laughing. One of the two of us at the park, on the swings, with the sun shining behind us. How much longer would I get to see her? How many more hugs did I have left before they snatched her away forever? The clock read 3 a.m. when I made a decision. I found the drawing Emily had given me, the one of us holding hands. I folded it carefully and put it in the pocket of my robe. Then I took the folder Ms. Flores had left and threw it in the trash can. If they were going to take my granddaughter from me, they would have to do it in a fight. But I was not going to give them my dignity. I was not going to sign my own humiliation. Maybe I was a stubborn old woman, as they said. Maybe I was naive for thinking justice existed. But I had learned something in these months of hell. I would rather lose everything fighting than keep something by kneeling. At dawn, as the sun painted the walls of my kitchen orange, I made myself a strong coffee and sat down to wait for whatever came next. Because if my daughters wanted a war, I had finally found the courage to give them one. Not for the money, not for the house, but to show Emily, even if she never knew, that some things are worth fighting for, and that true love never gives up, even when all seems lost. The hearing began the first week of December. The family courtroom smelled of old paper and disinfectant. The wooden benches were hard and uncomfortable, designed so that no one could feel at ease while their life unraveled in front of strangers. I arrived with Mr. Davis, wearing my best dress, A navy blue one I had bought for a cousin's wedding years ago. I had done my hair carefully, put on a little makeup. I needed to look capable, lucid, dignified. Sarah and Laura entered together, flanked by their lawyers. Sarah wore a black power suit that made her look formidable. Laura wore a gray dress that gave her the air of a victim. Neither of them met my eyes as they passed me. The judge was a man in his 50s, with completely white hair and deep wrinkles that suggested he had seen too many families destroy themselves in this very room. His name was Hector Villanueva, according to the nameplate on his desk. Case 2847B, the clerk announced. Sarah Clark and Laura Miller versus Grace Miller. Petition for conservatorship on grounds of alleged mental incapacity. The words echoed in the room like a sentence. Alleged mental incapacity. That's what they had reduced me to. A legal problem to be solved. Miss Carmen Flores stood up, imposing in her burgundy suit. Your Honor, we represent the daughters of Mrs. Grace Miller, who with deep concern and sorrow have had to make this difficult decision. Their mother, age 68, has shown clear signs of cognitive decline and has made erratic decisions that jeopardize her estate and her well-being. What decisions specifically? The judge asked. She abruptly changed her will without consulting her family, leaving an estate of $450,000 to a minor, completely excluding her 2 adult daughters who have cared for her for years. Furthermore, she has shown paranoia, accusing her family of conspiring against her, and has expressed intentions to squander her assets. Mr. Davis stood up. Your Honor, these accusations are completely baseless. My client is in full command of her mental faculties, as the medical evaluations we will present will demonstrate. She has the absolute right to dispose of her assets as she sees fit. The true motive for this petition is the greed of her daughters, who cannot accept that their mother has made decisions that do not benefit them. Order, the judge said, tapping his gavel lightly. We will proceed with the testimonies. Call your first witness. Sarah was the first to take the stand. She looked composed, professional, almost convincing in her role as the concerned daughter. Can you describe your mother's behavior in recent months? Her lawyer asked. She's been very different, Sarah answered, her voice trembling as if she were holding back tears. She used to be sweet, helpful. Now she's bitter, resentful. She accuses us of terrible things. She says we don't love her, that we use her. It's painful to see her like this. Have you noticed any memory lapses? Yes. She forgets conversations we've had. She repeats the same stories. Sometimes she doesn't remember what day it is. Lies. All lies. But told with such conviction that some people in the courtroom nodded sympathetically. And the will? When did you find out about the change? By chance. I found some documents at her house when I went to visit. I was shocked. My mother had always said she would leave everything divided equally between us. Suddenly, without explanation, it all goes to my 8-year-old daughter. It's obvious someone influenced her. Perhaps that lawyer. She pointed contemptuously at Mr. Davis. Objection, my lawyer said. Speculation and slander. Sustained, the judge replied. Stick to relevant questions. When it was Mr. Davis's turn to cross-examine her, his tone was firm but respectful. Mrs. Clark, when was the last time you visited your mother before discovering the change in the will? Sarah hesitated. I don't remember exactly. I visit often. Once a month? Once a week? Well, I have a busy life. My job, my family. According to the phone records we will be presenting, you did not call your mother a single time in the 3 months prior to the change in the will. Is that correct? I don't always call. Sometimes I text. The text message records also show no communication. In fact, the only time you visited your mother in that period was when you needed her to sign documents to transfer the house title to you. Is that right? Sarah's face turned red. That was to protect her. Or to benefit yourself. Your mother shared with me audio recordings of that conversation where you and your husband discussed how to pressure her into signing. Would you like us to play them for the court? Objection, Ms. Flores jumped in. Those recordings may have been obtained illegally. They were recorded on my client's property, where she has every right to record conversations, Mr. Davis replied. The judge called for a 15-minute recess. During that time, I sat on a bench outside the courtroom, shaking. Mr. Davis put a hand on my shoulder. "You're doing well. Her contradictions are being exposed. But people believe her. I saw their faces. They find her convincing. We haven't presented our evidence yet. Have faith." When we returned, it was Laura's turn. Her strategy was different. She presented herself as the repentant daughter who only wanted what was best for her mother. "I made mistakes," she admitted, with tears in her eyes. "I distanced myself from my mom out of pride. But when I found out what was happening, when I saw she was being manipulated, I knew I had to act. I don't care about the inheritance. I just want my mother to be well taken care of." It was a magnificent performance. For a second, even I almost believed her. They brought witnesses. A neighbor who said she'd seen me talking to myself in the garden. A bank teller who claimed I seemed confused when I made a transaction. A psychologist my daughters hired, who had never examined me personally, but suggested, based on the testimonies, that I might be suffering from the onset of dementia. Every testimony was like a stab wound. Each word redrew my reality, transforming me from a victim into a villain, from a wounded mother into a senile old woman. Finally, Mr. Davis presented our defense. First, the results of my medical evaluations. 3 different doctors certifying that my cognitive ability was completely normal for my age. Memory tests, logical reasoning, decision-making, all within normal parameters. Then, my bank statements. Every expense documented, every bill paid on time. My finances managed with precision for decades. After that, testimonies from people who actually knew me. Mr. Rodriguez, my neighbor, who testified that he saw me every day tending my garden, conversing coherently, functioning independently. The woman at the farmer's market where I bought my vegetables, who confirmed that I negotiated prices, remembered previous conversations, and paid the exact amount owed. And finally, the video we recorded in Mr. Davis's office. Me, looking at the camera, explaining my reasons for changing the will clearly and articulately. I changed my will because my daughters have treated me with contempt and cruelty, because they only seek me out when they need something, because I want my granddaughter Emily, the only person who treats me with genuine love, to have a secure future. This is my decision, made in full awareness and of my own free will. The silence in the room after the video was deafening. "Your Honor," Mr. Davis concluded, "what we have here is not a case of mental incapacity. It is a case of adult children who cannot accept that their mother has finally made a decision that excludes them from the financial benefit they consider their right. My client has every legal, moral, and ethical right to dispose of her assets as she sees fit, and no amount of legal manipulation can change that." The judge took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "I need time to review all the evidence presented. I will issue my verdict in 10 business days. You are dismissed." We left the courtroom. Sarah and Laura left quickly, without looking at me. But before they reached the door, something unexpected happened. Emily came running down the hall. Eleanor, Mark's mother, was behind her trying to catch up. "Grandma!" Emily shouted, throwing herself into my arms. "Emily, no!" Sarah's voice was pure venom. "I told you, you are not to speak to her." "I don't care." The little girl hugged me with all her might. "I miss you, Grandma. Why can't I come to your house anymore?" Sarah yanked her by the arm, hard. "Because your grandmother is sick and it's not safe for you." "That's a lie," Emily shouted, and for the first time I saw rebellion in her eyes. "She's not sick. You're the mean one." The sound of the slap echoed in the courthouse hallway. Sarah had struck her own daughter. Emily brought a hand to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock and pain. Everyone in the hallway froze. "Ma'am." Judge Villanueva's voice came from the courtroom door. He had witnessed the entire thing. "Did you just strike your child in this courthouse?" Sarah went pale. She was misbehaving. "Not in my courthouse." His voice was like steel. "And after witnessing this, I'll give you a preview. I'm going to order a psychological evaluation not of your mother, but of you, because anyone who strikes a child for expressing love for their grandmother has serious problems to address." I knelt in front of Emily and gently stroked her red cheek. "Don't cry, my love. Everything is going to be okay. Can I go to your house, Grandma?" Please. I don't want to be with her. I looked at the judge. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. Yes, my sweet girl. You can come with me. And for the first time in months, I walked out of that place feeling something like hope. Emily stayed with me that night, and the ones that followed. The judge had granted temporary custody while Sarah's psychological evaluations were conducted, and the courthouse incident was investigated. For the first time in months, my house felt alive again. We cooked together in the afternoons. She would stand on a chair next to the stove and help me stir the rice, taste the soup for seasoning, and knead the dough for the bread she loved so much. Her laughter filled the empty spaces that silence had occupied for so long. "Grandma, why is my mom so mean to you?" she asked one night as I braided her hair before bed. It was an impossible question to answer without destroying the image a child should have of her mother. So, I chose my words carefully. "Sometimes people forget what's important, my love. They get so worried about things that they forget to take care of people." "Like money?" I was surprised by her insight. "Yes, like money. I don't want to be like that when I grow up. I want to be like you." I hugged her so tightly I could feel her small bones against mine. "You are already better than me, my sweet girl. You have a heart that no one has managed to spoil." That week was the happiest I'd had in years. I took Emily to school every morning, packing her lunchbox with sandwiches and fruit. I waited for her by the gate in the afternoons, and her smile when she saw me was worth more than the $450,000 my daughters were fighting over. We baked bread together. We visited the market square, where the vendors who had known me for decades gave her candy and told her jokes. We went to Brackenridge Park, where she flew from the swings again and again, yelling, "Look at me, Grandma, I'm flying." At night, after she fell asleep, I would sit by her bed and watch her breathe, her face at peace, her little hands clutching the stuffed animal I had given her for her last birthday. And I allowed myself to imagine a future where she was still part of my life, where I was still important to someone. The verdict came 10 days later, as Judge Villanueva had promised. I returned to the courthouse with Mr. Davis. This time, Emily stayed with Mr. Rodriguez, my neighbor, who had offered to watch her for the afternoon. Sarah and Laura arrived with their lawyers, but something had changed in them. They looked defeated. Sarah had deep, dark circles under her eyes, and her expensive clothes were wrinkled. Laura was visibly trembling. The judge entered, and we all rose. He sat, reviewed his documents, and finally spoke. "I have thoroughly reviewed all the evidence presented in this case. The medical evaluations, the testimonies, the financial records, and the incident I personally witnessed in this courthouse 10 days ago." The silence was absolute. I could hear my own heart pounding in my ears. "The petition for conservatorship filed by Mrs. Sarah Clark and Ms. Laura Miller is hereby denied. Mrs. Grace Miller has proven to be in full command of her mental, cognitive, and emotional faculties. She has the complete capacity to manage her assets and make decisions regarding them." I felt my legs go weak. Mr. Davis held my arm to steady me. "Furthermore," the judge continued, his tone growing sterner, "I have found troubling evidence that this petition was filed with financial motivations rather than genuine concern for Mrs. Miller's well-being. The petitioner's behavior, especially the incident of physical violence against the minor Emily Clark in the presence of this court, suggests that they are the ones in need of guidance and supervision." Sarah turned ashen. Laura began to cry silently. "Therefore, I order the following. First, the temporary custody of the minor Emily Clark is extended for another 6 months under the care of her grandmother, Grace Miller, while Mrs. Sarah Clark completes a court-mandated anger management program and family therapy." "You can't do that!" Sarah shouted, jumping to her feet. "She's my daughter." "Silence!" The gavel struck the bench with force. "You struck your child in the presence of multiple witnesses, including this judge. Be grateful I am not pursuing criminal charges. Second," he continued, "the petitioners will cover Mrs. Grace Miller's legal fees, amounting to $8,700. "What?" Laura stood up, swaying. "We don't have that kind of money. You should have considered that before filing a frivolous and malicious lawsuit. Third, a temporary restraining order is established. Mrs. Sarah Clark and Ms. Laura Miller are not to come within 100 yards of Mrs. Grace Miller's property unless by express written invitation from her. I looked at my daughters. Sarah was staring at me with pure hatred. Laura just looked destroyed, broken. And finally, the judge looked directly at me. Mrs. Miller, your will is valid and legally binding. No one can force you to change it. Your assets are yours to dispose of as you see fit. Case closed. The gavel struck one last time. I walked out of that courthouse feeling something I hadn't experienced in years. Freedom. Mr. Davis hugged me. Something completely unprofessional, but necessary. We did it, Mrs. Miller. We did it. I cried in his arms, not from sadness, but from relief, from the impossible weight that had finally been lifted from my shoulders. When I got home, Emily was waiting for me at the gate with Mr. Rodriguez. As soon as she saw me, she ran. Did you win, Grandma? We won, my love. We won. That night, after putting Emily to bed, I sat on the porch under the stars. The bougainvillea I had tended for years was in full bloom, its fuchsia flowers glowing in the moonlight. The air smelled of damp earth and the food Mrs. Guadalupe was cooking next door. For the first time in decades, I felt like the owner of my own life. The following days were strange. There were no calls from Sarah or Laura. The silence of their absence was deafening, but no longer painful. It was just empty, a space that I could now fill with other things. Emily blossomed under my care. Her grades at school improved. She started smiling more, playing more freely. One afternoon, her teacher asked to speak with me after school. Mrs. Miller, I just wanted to tell you, Emily is like a different child. She used to be so quiet, almost fearful. Now she participates in class, plays with her friends, she laughs. I don't know what's changed in her life, but whatever it is, please keep doing it. I'm just giving her what every child deserves, I replied. Unconditional love. In January, I received a letter. It was from Laura. Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to ever want to speak to me again. I just want you to know that you were right. About everything. I've been in therapy these past few months, and I've realized how much I hurt you, how much I hurt myself. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to say I'm sorry, and that I finally understand why you made the decisions you did. I love you, even if I don't have the right to say it anymore. Laura. I read the letter 3 times. Part of me wanted to tear it up, to throw it away with all the years of pain. But another part, the part that still remembered the little girl Laura once was, put it away in a drawer. Maybe someday I would reply. Maybe not. But that decision was mine, and no one could force me to make it before I was ready. I heard nothing from Sarah, and honestly, I didn't want to. One Saturday morning, while Emily and I were baking bread, someone knocked on the door. It was a young woman with a camera and a recorder. Mrs. Grace Miller? I'm Lucy Mendoza, a reporter with the San Antonio Express-News. I'd like to interview you about your case. Your story has caught the attention of several senior advocacy groups. My story? Yes. An older woman who defended her right to decide about her own estate against her own children, who exposed the emotional and financial abuse many seniors suffer at the hands of their families. It's inspiring. I wasn't sure I wanted to speak publicly about something so private and painful, but Lucy was persuasive. There are thousands of people in your situation, ma'am. People who are being manipulated, exploited, and mistreated by their own families. Your story could help them find the strength to fight back. I agreed to the interview. We talked for 2 hours. I told her everything. The lunch where they humiliated me, the change of will, the lawsuit, the trial. Lucy recorded every word, taking notes frantically. The article came out a week later on the front page. 68-year-old grandmother wins legal battle against daughters. I won't buy love with my inheritance. The response was overwhelming. The newspaper received hundreds of letters. People sharing their own stories of family abuse. Seniors who felt seen. Nonprofits offering free legal support for similar cases. A foundation for seniors' rights contacted me. They wanted to know if I'd be willing to become a spokesperson, to help create a legal support program for people in situations like mine. I'm not anyone special, I told them. I'm just a woman who got tired of being treated like garbage. That's precisely why, replied the foundation's director, an elegant woman named Mariana Torres. Because you represent millions of people who are suffering in silence, who believe they have no options, who think they have to endure mistreatment because it's family. Your story shows them there is another way. And so, the Silver Dignity Foundation was born. With my case as a catalyst, and with the support of volunteer lawyers, social workers, and psychologists who wanted to make a difference. We didn't have a fancy office, just a community room that the local church let us use twice a week. But it was enough. Enough for people to come and tell their stories, to ask for advice, to find hope. 6 months had passed since the verdict. 6 months in which my life transformed in ways I never could have imagined. The house that once felt like a silent tomb now echoed with Emily's life, her laughter, her off-key singing, the sound of her feet running down the hall each morning. The foundation grew faster than anyone expected. Every week we helped more people. Mr. Ramiro, a 75-year-old man whose son had been stealing his pension for years. Mrs. Carmela, whose daughter-in-law had locked her in a room when she could no longer work as a babysitter for her grandchildren. Mr. Villegas, who discovered his children had sold his house from under him while he was in the hospital. Each story was a mirror of my own pain, and every time we managed to help someone, I felt my suffering had served a purpose greater than myself. One afternoon in June, while I was organizing papers at the community room, Mariana came in with a huge smile. "Grace, you have to see this." She showed me her laptop. It was an email from the state government. They want to give us an official recognition and funding to expand the program across all of Texas. I was speechless. What had started as my small personal stand against injustice had become something that would help thousands of people. "There's more," Mariana continued. "They want you to give the keynote speech at the award ceremony, in front of the governor, the media, everyone. I can't speak in public. I'm just a woman who used to sell bread. You are so much more than that, Grace. You're a symbol, a fighter, a survivor." The event was held at the Majestic Theater, the same theater where I had once taken my little girls. Now, I was on stage, in front of hundreds of people, wearing a new dress Emily had helped me pick out. My hands trembled as I held the microphone. I saw Emily in the front row, next to Mr. Rodriguez and Mrs. Guadalupe. My granddaughter was giving me a little thumbs up. I took a deep breath and began to speak. "My name is Grace Miller. I'm 68 years old, and for most of my life, I believed my worth depended on how much I could give to others. I believed that love was bought with sacrifice, that a good mother was one who completely emptied herself for her children, regardless of whether those children appreciated that sacrifice." My voice resonated through the theater. I could see faces in the audience, some crying, others nodding. My daughters taught me a painful but necessary lesson, that giving everything guarantees you nothing in return, that you can raise, feed, and sacrifice for people who, in the end, will only see you as a means to get what they want. And when you have nothing left to give, they will discard you like trash. I paused. Tears threatened to fall, but I held them back. But I also learned something beautiful, that it is never too late to choose yourself, that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival, that your dignity is not for sale, no matter how much they offer for it. I looked directly at Emily, and I learned that true love doesn't always come from where we expect it. Sometimes it comes from an 8-year-old girl who just wanted a piece of bread and a hug from her grandmother. That little girl saved my life without even knowing it. She reminded me why it's worth getting up every morning. The audience erupted in applause. My legs were shaking, but I stood firm. If there is anyone here who is suffering in silence, who is being mistreated by their own family, who believes they have no options, you do. You always do. Your life is yours. Your dignity is yours. And no one, not even the people who share your blood, has the right to take that away from you. When I finished the speech and stepped off the stage, there was a line of people waiting to speak to me. Seniors who wanted to share their stories. Young people who wanted to volunteer. Lawyers offering their services pro bono. But the person who mattered most to me was Emily, who hugged me with all the strength in her skinny little arms. "I'm so proud of you, Grandma. You're like a superhero." "No, my love, you're my superhero. You gave me the strength to fight, 2 months later, in August, Sarah asked to see me. She sent a short text message. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Please." I didn't answer right away. It took 3 days before I gathered the courage to reply. Maria's Cafe, Thursday at 3. I arrived early at the cafe, a small place near the Riverwalk that served the best hot chocolate in San Antonio. I sat at a table in the back, my hands wrapped around a steaming mug, trying to calm my nerves. Sarah walked in at exactly 3 o'clock. She looked different, thinner, her hair unstyled. The dark circles under her eyes suggested sleepless nights. She sat across from me without a word. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. "I came to say I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice barely a whisper. "I know those words don't mean anything after everything I did, but I need to say them anyway." I didn't respond. I just watched her, waiting. The therapy the judge made me take. It opened my eyes to things I didn't want to see. The therapist asked me when the last time was that I told you I loved you without needing something in return. And I couldn't remember, Mom. I couldn't remember a single time. A tear rolled down her cheek. "Mark and I are getting a divorce. It turns out that when I didn't have your house or your money to offer him, he lost interest in me. I guess that's how you must have felt all these years. Used." "Sarah." "No." She cut me off. "Let me finish. I didn't come to ask for forgiveness, because I don't deserve it. I came to tell you that Emily can stay with you, permanently. I'm going to sign the papers to give you full custody. She is happier with you than she ever was with me. And that shatters me, but it also relieves me, because at least she will have what I never gave you: gratitude, respect, and genuine love." She stood up to leave. "Sarah, wait." She stopped, without turning to look at me. "I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe I never will completely, but I appreciate that you came, that you said these words. It's a start." She nodded without another word and walked out of the cafe. I watched her go through the window, a lonely figure walking through the streets of San Antonio. Part of me felt sorry for her, but it wasn't my responsibility to save her anymore. She had to do that work herself. When I got home that afternoon, Emily was in the backyard painting. She had turned the garden into her personal art studio, with makeshift easels and small canvases where she captured flowers and butterflies in vibrant colors. "How did it go with my mom?" she asked, without looking up from her painting. I was surprised she knew. "How did you know I saw her?" "I heard your phone when the text came in. I didn't want to say anything because I thought you'd be mad." I sat next to her on the grass. "I'm not mad, and it went, okay, hard, but okay." "Does she want me to go back with her?" "No. She wants you to stay here. With me." Emily stopped painting and looked at me with those enormous eyes. "Forever?" "Forever." She threw herself into my arms with such force she almost knocked me over. "That's the best thing anyone has ever told me." We stayed like that, hugging in the garden as the sun set over San Antonio. The bougainvilleas bloomed around us, and the air smelled of damp earth and the tortillas Mrs. Guadalupe was making for dinner. 2 years have passed since that lunch that changed my life. 2 years since Emily asked me for a simple piece of bread, and I made the most important decision of my existence. I'm 70 now. Emily is 10, and she's the brightest girl I know. She was top of her class this year. She wants to be a lawyer when she grows up, to help grandmas like you, she says. The Silver Dignity Foundation now operates in 5 cities across Texas. We've helped over 300 people reclaim their autonomy, their dignity, their lives. Every case we win is a victory not just for them, but for that 68-year-old woman who one day decided she deserved better. Laura and I see each other occasionally for coffee. Our relationship is cautious, fragile, built on acknowledging mistakes rather than forgetting them. We will never be what we were. But maybe we can be something new, something more honest. Sarah is on her own path. She sends me texts on Christmas and my birthday. Short, formal, but sincere. It's enough for now. This morning, while I was making breakfast, I found a note Emily had left on the refrigerator. It said, "Grandma, when I grow up, I want to be exactly like you. Strong, brave, and with a heart that doesn't give up. I love you to infinity. P.S. Can we make bread today?" I read that note 3 times, with tears rolling down my cheeks. Tears of pure happiness. Because in the end, that piece of bread I gave my granddaughter on that terrible day became the nourishment that saved us both, not just the physical bread, but what it represented: unconditional love, defended dignity, and recognized worth. And if you who are listening to this have been through something similar, if you know someone who is being mistreated by their own family, I want you to know this: your life is worth more than any inheritance. Your peace is worth more than any family approval, and it is never, ever too late to choose yourself. Have you ever experienced something like this? Or do you know someone who has? I would love to know. Leave me your answer in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, if it made you think even a little, I ask you to leave a like and subscribe to this channel, because stories like this need to be told. They need to reach that person who today is sitting in their empty kitchen, wondering if it's still worth fighting. The answer is yes. It is always worth it. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for giving me a space to heal by sharing. And remember, true love never makes you feel small. True love helps you grow. Until the next story, and may you find your own piece of bread that changes everything.